10th degree. Master-elect of 13. This grade very properly follows that of Master-elect of 9, as it gives the continuation and conclusion of the history of events commenced there, the arrest and punishment of the two other criminals for the atrocious crime they had committed, as related elsewhere. Decorations. The chapter represents the audience chamber of King Solomon, and is hung in black spread with red and white tiers. In the east is a skeleton representing Jubileum, Akirop. In the west, one representing Jubela, Gibbs. In the south, one representing Jubelo, Cravilot, of whose blood the flies have sucked. Each of these skeletons is armed with that tool with which they perpetrated the murder of Hiram Abith. The chapter is lighted by 15 lights, 5 in the east before the commander, and 5 before each warden. Titles. This meeting is styled a chapter. The commander is styled Most Illustrious Master. The senior warden, Inspector, and the junior warden, Introductor. At a reception, initiation, only 15 elect are allowed to be present in the chapter, the others remain outside. Clothing, apron white, lined and bordered with black. On the center is painted a square-built city, representing Jerusalem, 3 gates of which are seen in the distance. Above the gates are 3 heads impaled on spikes. Order is a black ribbon from the left shoulder to the right hip. Where it crosses the breast, 3 heads impaled on spikes are painted thereon. Jewel, a balance, with a scroll, square and compass, and dagger on one plate, and 3 decapitated heads on the other. Opening ceremonies. Most Illustrious Master, Knox 5. And the 5 candles in the east are lighted. Inspector, Adoniram, Knox 5. And the 5 candles in the west are lighted. Introductor, Stokin, Knox 5. And the 5 candles in the south are lighted. Master, Brother Inspector, what's the clock? Inspector, Most Illustrious Master, it is 5 o'clock and the dawn of justice and truth appears in the east. Master, if it is 5 o'clock and the dawn of justice and truth appears in the east, it is time to begin work. Give notice that this chapter of Master-elect of 15 is about to open. Inspector, Brethren, you will please take notice that this chapter of elect of 15 is about to open. Master, Knox 15. Inspector, Knox 15. Introductor, Knox 15. Master, I declare this chapter of Master-elect of 15 open. Master, Knox 1 and the lodge is seated. Initiation. The Master of Ceremonies retires to the ante-room, prepares the candidate, conducts him to the door of the chapter and Knox 5. Introductor, Stokin, Knox 5. Illustrious Master, there is an alarm at the door. Master, Brother Expert, see who knocks at the door of our chapter to interrupt our deliberations. Expert, goes to the door, Knox 5, and opens it a little. Who knocks at the door of our chapter to interrupt our deliberations? Who's there? Inspector, Adoniram, it is an elect of 9. Brother Joabot, who wants to know the other 2 ruffians of our respectable Master Hiram Abipham to arrive at the degree of Master-elect of 15. Expert, shuts the door and says, Most Illustrious Master, it is Brother Joabot, who wants to know the other 2 ruffians of our respectable Master Hiram Abiph, and to arrive at the degree of Master-elect of 15. Master, let Brother Joabot be admitted. Adoniram and candidate enter, and make 15 steps in a triangular manner, and advance to the altar. Master, faithful Joabot, what do you wish? Inspector, for candidate, I wish to know the other 2 ruffians of our respectable Master Hiram Abiph, and to arrive at the degree of Master-elect of 15. Master, Brother Joabot, the zeal, fervor and constancy you have shown in the preceding degrees, and more especially in the degree of Master-elect of 9, had it not been for the intercession of your brethren, would have cost you your life. It is now 6 months since the execution of Jubileum, of whom the skeleton in the east is a representation. Since which time I have caused Bingabi, one of my intendants in the country of Chuth, to cause diligent inquiry to be made if any person had taken shelter in those parts who might be supposed to have fled from Jerusalem, and I have just received information that several persons answering the description of the other 2 ruffians have arrived there, and believing themselves secure, have begun to work in the quarries of Indaka. I have also written to King Marcher of Chuth to have them apprehended, and have requested him to cause them to be delivered to those whom I shall send there to secure them and bring them to Jerusalem, to receive the punishment due for their crimes. I have selected 14 of our most worthy brethren, and zealous masters, and have also selected you as the 15th to proceed to the country of Chuth, and secure the other 2 murderers and bring them to Jerusalem to receive the punishment adequate to their crimes. Do you consent to make the number of 15 for that purpose? Candidate: I do, most cheerfully. Master: having cheerfully accepted of the appointment, you will now, together with the rest of the brethren whom I have selected, proceed to the country of Chuth, and gain admission into the presence of King Marcher, and deliver to him this letter with the request to apprehend if possible the other 2 murderers of Hiram-Abiff and deliver them into your charge, to be secured and brought back to Jerusalem to receive the punishment due for their crimes. You will now depart and execute my orders. Master: illustrious Grand Captain of the Guards, you will now assemble your guards and escort the brethren to the country of Chuth. Captain of the Guards forms them into line and all retire except the 2 kings and expert. The senior warden now dresses in royal robes and takes the character of Marcher, King of Chuth, and takes the east. Embassy, Knox 5. Expert, Knox 5. And opens the door. Who's there? Master of Ceremonies, an embassy from Solomon, King of Israel to King Marcher of Chuth. Expert, most powerful King Marcher, it is an embassy from Solomon, King of Israel, who desires an audience with your majesty. King Marcher, let them be admitted. Expert, goes to the door, Knox 5, and opens it. Let them be admitted. Master of Ceremonies with candidate and attendants enter, approach the throne and kneel on one knee. Master of Ceremonies, most powerful King Marcher, Solomon our king, hearing that a number of his subjects had fled from Jerusalem and taken shelter in this country and are at this present time working in the quarries of Bendaka, has sent this embassy into your royal presence to ask permission to search in the quarries for the other 2 murderers of our lamented master Hiram-Abiff, to secure them and carry them back to Jerusalem to receive the punishment due for their crimes. Hands the letter to King Marcher, who opens it and pretends to read it. King Marcher, illustrious Grand Captain of the Guards, you will assemble a sufficient number of your guards and conduct these brethren from Jerusalem to the quarries of Bendaka, cause strict search to be made therein, and if the murderers are found, let them be bound in chains and delivered to the embassy, to be sent back to Jerusalem, as I should be most happy in having my country cleared of such monsters. Captain of Guard, attention guards. All rise and form into line in the north. Captain of Guard, 8 face, forward march. All retire but expert and the 2 kings. Master of Ceremonies and candidate with Captain of the Guard and members find 2 of the brethren in the ante-room, with sleeves rolled up and working with hammer and chisel on some stone, who take the character of the other 2 ruffians. They are seized by Master of Ceremonies and candidate and bound in chains, and are conducted to the door of the lodge. Master of Ceremonies, Knox 5. Introducer, Knox 5. Most illustrious Master, there is an alarm at the door. Master, brother expert, see who knocks at the door of our chapter to interrupt our deliberations. Expert, goes to the door, Knox 5, and opens it. Who knocks at the door of our chapter to interrupt our deliberations? Master of Ceremonies, it is Brother Joabot from the country of Chuth, having in charge the other 2 murderers of Hiram-Abiff. Expert, most powerful, it is Brother Joabot having in charge the other 2 murderers of Hiram-Abiff. Master, let them be admitted. Expert, opens the door. Let them be admitted. Master of Ceremonies and candidate with 2 ruffians enter and proceed to the altar. Master, brother Master of Ceremonies, what tidings do you bring? Master of Ceremonies, most powerful king, the 2 remaining murderers of Hiram-Abiff have been found in the quarries of Bendaka, have been seized, bound and brought back to Jerusalem, and we now have them before you for your righteous judgment. Master, illustrious Grand Captain of the Guards, let them be imprisoned in the Tower of Achiza, and tomorrow morning let punishment be inflicted upon them adequate to their crimes, and their heads exposed at the gates of the palace with that of a Cherop. Away with them. Away with them, I say. Murderers are conducted out of the lodge. Master, to whom do we owe this signal service? Master of Ceremonies, to Brother Joabot, who after 5 days' search discovered them cutting stone in the quarries of Bendaka. Master, and now Brother Joabot, for the fervency and zeal you have shown for our order, in bringing to condign punishment the murderers of our respectable Master Hiram Abiff, you will now approach the altar and contract your obligation, and be elevated to this sublime degree in order that you should become equal with your brethren. Joe Abbott kneels at the altar. Obligation Master-elect of 15. I state your name, to promise and swear upon the Holy Bible, never to reveal where I have received this degree, nor even say who assisted at my reception, and I furthermore promise never to receive any in this degree without a full power from my superiors, nor to assist at any reception unless in a regular manner and chapter of this degree, to keep exactly in my heart all the secrets that shall be revealed to me. And in failure of this my obligation, I consent to have my body opened perpendicularly, and to be exposed for 8 hours in the open air, that the venomous flies may eat of my entrails, my head to be cut off and put on the highest pinnacle of the world, and I will always be ready to inflict the same punishment on those who shall disclose this degree and break this obligation. So may God help and maintain me. Amen. Master, rise Brother Joe Abbott, I greet you, and with pleasure put you in possession of the secrets of the degree. Sign, place the point of the poniard under the chin, and draw it downward to the waist, as if in the act of ripping open the abdomen. Answer, give the signs of an emptied apprentice with the fingers clenched and the thumb extended. Token, interlace each other's fingers of the right hand. Password, Eligname or Elium, sacred word, Zilal. Answer benched. Battery, is 15 strokes given 5 strokes by 3 times. Hours of work, from 5 in the morning until 6 at eve. Moral, that the unerring eye of justice will discover the guilty, and they suffer the punishment their crimes deserve. Master, resuming his seat. And now my brethren join me in applauding the elevation of Joe Abbott to the degree of elective 15. All rise and together give the battery. Master, Brother Adoniram, you will now conduct Brother Joe Abbott to his seat, to listen attentively to the discourse by our Grand Orator. Discourse by Grand Orator. Brother Joe Abbott, in the legends of Masonry, the greatest enemy of Hiram or truth is called the Cherub, or Jubileum. He had 2 companions to whom various names have been given. You, Brother Joe Abbott, have pursued and destroyed them all 3. They represent, first, ignorance or darkness, second, superstition or error, third, egotism or ambition. In the legend or mythology of the Persians, they were Ahriman, or the evil principle attended by darkness and chaos. In the mysteries of the Egyptians, they were Typhon, the enemy and assassin of Osiris, assisted by Serapis and Amenthys. Among the Greeks they were Titan, Python and Chimera. Many myths of the overthrow of the enemies of man and nature were invented. Now it is Jupiter, seconded by Apollo and Pan. Now it is Ormuzd, aided by the Amshospans and Szeds. They all agree in fixing the period of the victory in the zodiacal sign of Capricornus, when the sun begins his ascension and when nature resumes her work of annual reproduction. In the degree of elective 9s of which you have passed, you have learned that Jubileum, a Cherub, one of the ruffians, was killed in a cave. That skeleton in the east is a representation of him, with a setting maul with which he was armed when he knocked down Hiram Abiff. His head Solomon had embalmed in order to be exposed until the other 2 were found out. 6 months after a Cherub was killed, Bingay one Solomon's intendants, made inquiry in the country of Chuth, tributary to Solomon, when he learned that Jubela, Gibbs, and Jubelo, Gravelot, the 2 other assassins, had retired there, thinking themselves safe. Solomon, having learned this, wrote immediately to King Marcher of Chuth, desiring him to give up these 2 villains to the people he should send, in order to receive at Jerusalem the punishment due for their crimes. In consequence of which, Solomon elected 15 of the most worthy brethren and zealous masters, in which number were included the 9 that went to the cave of a Cherub. They began their march on the 5th day of the month Tammuz, which answers to the month of June, and arrived on the 28th of the same month in the country of Chuth, and delivered Solomon's letter to King Marcher, who trembled at the news and immediately ordered a strict search to be made for the 2 ruffians, and if found to be delivered to the Israelites, and said he would be happy in having his country cleared of such monsters. For 5 days there was a strict search made, when Zerbel and Eligname were the first to discover them in the quarries of Indaka. They chained them together and loaded them with irons, on which were engraved the crimes they had been guilty of, to have their approaching fate before their eyes. They arrived at Jerusalem on the 15th of the following month, and when conducted to Solomon, he charged them, with the most striking reproaches of their black crimes, and ordered them to be put in the Tower of Alcazar, until the day they were to be executed by the most excruciating torments and death proportionable if possible to their crimes. On the day of execution they were tied to 2 stakes by the neck, middle and feet, their arms behind them. The executioner then opened them from the breast to the arse pubis, and crosswise, and they were left in this condition 8 hours, in which time the flies and other insects sucked their blood. Their groans and complaints were so lamentable, that they even moved the executioner, who cut off their heads and threw their bodies over the walls of Jerusalem to serve as food for the crows and wild beasts of the forest. Thus, my brother, we close the history of Master Elective 15. Lecture. Most illustrious Master, Brother Inspector, are you on a Grand Master elected? Inspector, my zeal and my work have procured me this degree. Most illustrious Master, where have you been received? Inspector, by Solomon himself in his audience chamber. Most illustrious Master, when did he receive you, and on what occasion? Inspector, when he sent me with my companions to find the 2 other ruffians. Most illustrious Master, were you inquiring after them yourself? Inspector, yes, most illustrious Sovereign, and if I had not been named by Solomon I should at my own expense have gone to show my zeal in revenging the death of Hiram-Abith. Most illustrious Master, you felt then a great joy when you saw those villains executed? Inspector, the 3 heads I wear on my ribbon are a proof of it. Most illustrious Master, what signify these 3 heads? Inspector, they are the heads of the 3 assassins of Hiram-Abith. Most illustrious Master, what do you mean by 3 heads? Did you not tell me you went in search of 2 villains? Inspector, because one of the villains had already suffered before the other 2 were taken. Most illustrious Master, what were the names of the 2 you brought to Jerusalem? Inspector, one was called Jubela, Gib, and the other Jubelo, Gravelot. Most illustrious Master, how were they discovered? Inspector, by the diligence of Bengabi, Solomon's intendant in the country of Chuth. Most illustrious Master, what method did Solomon take to get them? Inspector, he wrote to Marcha, king of Chuth, desiring him to make a strict inquiry for them. Most illustrious Master, who carried and delivered Solomon's letter to Marcha? Inspector, Zerbal, captain of Solomon's guards. Most illustrious Master, did Marcha hesitate to grant Solomon's request? Inspector, no. On the contrary, he gave us guides and a guard. Most illustrious Master, where were they found? Inspector, in a quarry called Bendaka's quarry. Most illustrious Master, who was this Bendaka? Inspector, one of Solomon's intendants, who had married one of his daughters. Most illustrious Master, how came these 2 ruffians discovered? Inspector, by means of a shepherd who showed us their retreat. Most illustrious Master, who perceived them first? Inspector, Zerbal and Elignaim, after 5 days' search. Most illustrious Master, how were their chains made? Inspector, in form of a rulum square, on which was engraved the crimes they had committed, in order to have their approaching fate before their eyes. Most illustrious Master, when did you return to Jerusalem? Inspector, the 15th of the month Ab, which answers to our month of July. Most illustrious Master, how long were you on the voyage? Inspector, 1 month exactly. Most illustrious Master, how many masters were elected by Solomon to go on this expedition? Inspector, 15, of which number I was one. Most illustrious Master, was there nobody else with you? Inspector, yes, King Solomon sent troops to escort us. Most illustrious Master, what did you do with the ruffians after you arrived at Jerusalem? Inspector, we carried them directly into the presence of Solomon. Most illustrious Master, what orders did Solomon give about them? Inspector, after he had reproached them bitterly for the enormity of their crimes, he ordered Alcazar, Grand Master of the household, to confine them in the tower that bore his name, and that they should be executed the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning. Most illustrious Master, with what kind of death were they punished? Inspector, they were tied naked by their necks and heels to 2 posts, their bodies cut open from their breasts to the arse pubis and crosswise. Most illustrious Master, did they continue any time in that condition? Inspector, they were thus exposed for 8 hours in the hot sun, that the venomous flies and insects should suck their blood. which made them suffer even more than death itself. They made such lamentations and cries that they even moved the executioner. Most illustrious master, what did he do with them afterwards? Inspector, he was so moved with their cries, that he cut off their heads and flung their bodies over the walls of Jerusalem, as food for the ravens and beasts. Most illustrious master, what was done with their heads? Inspector, they were fixed on poles by order of Solomon and exposed to public view, with that of a cherub, in order to give an example as well to the people as to the workmen of the temple. Most illustrious master, what was the name of the first villain? Inspector, according to the 9 elected, they called him Abiram, but the word is only an emblem, as it signifies villain or assassin. His right name is Jubilam, a cherub, and he was the eldest of the 3 brothers. Most illustrious master, on which gates were these heads exposed? Inspector, on the south, east and west gates. That of a cherub on the east gate, that of Jubelo, Gravelot, on the west, and that of Jubela, Gibbs, on the south gate. Most illustrious master, for what reason were their heads exposed on the gates of Jerusalem? Inspector, because they had each of them used their violence at these gates of the temple on Hiram Abith. For when Jubela, Gibbs, had struck him at the south gate with a 24-inch gidge, Jubelo, Gravelot, struck him with a square at the west gate, and Jubilam, a cherub, gave him the finishing blow with a setting maul at the east gate, which killed him. Most illustrious master, what is the word of the Grand Master-elect? Inspector, Zerbel and Benja. Most illustrious master, what is the pass? Inspector, Eleg name. Most illustrious master, what are the signs? Inspector, here they are. You comprehend me? He gives them. Most illustrious master, what are the tokens? Inspector, here they are. He gives them. Answer me. Master answers. Most illustrious master, what's the clock? Inspector, it is 6 in the evening. Most illustrious master, why 6 in the evening? Inspector, because it was at that hour when the last 2 assassins expired, by which the death of Hiram is avenged. Closing ceremonies. Thrice puissant, brother inspector, are you a sublime knight elected? Inspector, my name will inform you. Thrice puissant, what is your name? Inspector, Muth. Thrice puissant, what signifies that name? Inspector, a true man on all occasions. Thrice puissant, what time do you close the chapter? Inspector, at dawn of day. Thrice puissant, what's the clock? Inspector, the dawn of day, and tolerance, peace and harmony prevail. Thrice puissant, as day appears and tolerance, peace and harmony prevail, give notice that chapter of Sublime Knights Elected is closed. Inspector, Sublime Knights Elected, you will please take notice that this chapter is closed. Thrice puissant, together, Sublime Knights all clap 7, and the chapter is closed.